The Last Supper of False Elites. The plate shattered at my 7-year-old daughter's feet, splattering $100 Wagyu beef across the marble floor like roadkill. My son Leo screamed. My daughter Mia started sobbing, her tiny hands trembling as she tried to pick up the meat my brother Jason had just thrown at her like dog food. "That's where you belong," Jason slurred, his face flushed with champagne. "On your knees. Don't dirty our bloodline by sitting at this table." 100 guests, 100 phones came out, 100 people who called themselves the elite of the Hamptons stood there filming my children's humiliation, while my adoptive mother, Victoria, smiled that cold smile I'd known for 34 years. I felt something inside me change, not slowly like it had been building, but suddenly, like when you finally let go of something you've been holding onto for too long and your hands just open on their own. But before I tell you what I did next, if you're sick of watching good people get trampled while toxic families get away with everything, hit that like button. Subscribe because you're about to witness the most satisfying takedown you've ever seen. And comment below if you've ever been the scapegoat in your own family. Now let me take you back to where this all started. I was 8 years old when the Thorntons adopted me from foster care. I remember that day with painful clarity. The social worker had told me I was getting a family, a real family, and I'd spent the night before practicing how to call someone mum and dad. I'd imagined bedtime stories and birthday parties and someone asking about my day at school. What I got was Victoria's thin smile as she signed the papers and Robert's distracted nod as he checked his Rolex. The car ride to their house in Westchester was silent except for Victoria's instructions. Don't touch anything. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't embarrass us in front of the neighbours. Their house was beautiful. 3 stories of white columns and manicured hedges, the kind of place I'd only seen in magazines. Jason, who was 12 at the time, was waiting on the front steps. He looked me up and down with the same expression Victoria had, like I was something unfortunate they'd stepped in. "This is the orphan?" he asked. "Her name is Sarah," the social worker said firmly, "and she's very excited to be part of your family." Jason smirked. "We'll see how long that lasts." I didn't understand what he meant then. I do now. The first night, Victoria showed me to the basement. Not a finished basement with carpet and furniture. The actual basement. Concrete floors, exposed pipes, a camping cot in the corner with a thin blanket. "This is temporary," she said, not meeting my eyes, "until we can fix up the spare room." The spare room never got fixed. I lived in that basement for 10 years, through middle school and high school, listening to Jason's footsteps above me as he moved through the 4-bedroom suite they'd built for him on the 2nd floor. I showered in the utility sink until I was 14, and Victoria finally let me use the guest bathroom, but only after the family was done and only if I cleaned it spotless afterward. School was my escape. I threw myself into studying because it was the one place where effort equaled reward, where getting an A meant something, where teachers told me I was smart, capable, going places. At home, Victoria had a different assessment. "Don't get cocky," she told me when I brought home straight A's freshman year. "You're only doing well because the school feels sorry for you. They're grading you on a curve because you're damaged." I believed her. God help me, I believed her. When I wasn't studying, I was working. Victoria had a list of chores that started when I got home from school and didn't end until I went to bed. Laundry, dishes, scrubbing floors, cleaning bathrooms, yard work, grocery shopping, cooking dinner though I wasn't allowed to eat with them. I ate after alone in the kitchen, whatever was left over. Jason never lifted a finger. He'd drop his dirty clothes on the floor of his room and I'd pick them up. He'd leave dishes in the sink and I'd wash them. When he got his licence at 16, Victoria bought him a brand new BMW. When I turned 16, she handed me a bus pass and told me to be grateful. "You have to understand," Robert said once, the only time he ever attempted to explain their treatment of me. "Jason is our blood. He carries the Thornton name. You're a responsibility we took on out of charity. It's different." Different. That word became the theme of my adolescence. Different rules, different standards, different worth. I worked 3 jobs to save money for college. Weekday mornings I was at a diner from 5 to 7 serving breakfast before school. Weekends I worked at a department store and babysat for neighbours. Every penny went into a savings account I kept secret because I knew if Victoria found out, she'd find a reason to take it. The summer before college, I finally had enough saved for community college tuition. I was planning to live at home and commute to save money. I had it all worked out. Then Victoria called me into the living room. Robert and Jason were there too, all three of them looking serious. "We need to talk about your debt," Victoria said. I stared at her. "What debt?" She pulled out a folder thick with papers. "We've calculated the cost of raising you for the past 10 years. Food, shelter, utilities, medical care, school supplies. It comes to $95,000. We expect you to pay it back." The air seemed to leave the room. I couldn't catch my breath for a moment. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking?" Victoria's eyes were cold. "We took you in when no one else wanted you. We fed you, clothed, you kept a roof over your head. Did you think that was free?" "I worked," I said, my voice shaking. "I cleaned your house. I did everything you asked." "And we provided the house for you to clean," Robert said. "Really, Sarah, you should be grateful we're not charging interest." They had papers drawn up, a payment plan. They wanted $500 a month starting immediately. My entire college savings would be gone in less than a year, and I'd still owe them tens of thousands. I signed it. I was 18 and terrified, and I didn't know I had any other choice. The next day I called the college and withdrew my enrollment. I called my boss at the department store and asked for full-time hours. I gave up the diner job and got a second full-time job working nights at a warehouse. Victoria was pleased. "See, you're finally contributing to this family properly." I should have left then. I should have walked away and never looked back. But I had nowhere to go, no money, no family except the one extracting every ounce of labour and cash they could from me. And part of me, that broken 8-year-old part, still believed that if I just gave enough, if I just proved myself enough, they'd love me. Love, what a stupid word for what I was chasing. 2 years into my payment plan, when I'd managed to save a little again, Jason came to me with a problem. He'd gotten into gambling. Nothing serious, he said, just a friendly poker game that had gotten out of hand. He owed $15,000 to some very serious people who were threatening to break his legs. "You have to help me," he begged. "They're going to kill me, Sarah. Please, we're family." "We're family," the magic words that made me open my wallet every single time. I gave him the money. All of it. Everything I'd saved while working myself to exhaustion. He promised to pay me back within 6 months. I never saw a cent. 3 months later, it happened again. Different game, same story. Another 12,000, then 8,000, then 20,000. I took out loans. I maxed out credit cards I'd been stupid enough to open. By the time I was 23, I was $70,000 in debt from Jason's gambling alone, still paying Victoria her monthly $500 and working 2 jobs just to keep my head above water. "You're so good to your brother," Victoria would say with that smile that never reached her eyes. "Family takes care of family." But when I asked if they could reduce my monthly payments because I was drowning, Victoria looked at me like I'd suggested something obscene. "A debt is a debt," she said. "I didn't raise you to be a deadbeat. You didn't raise me at all, I thought, but didn't say. You used me." I was 25 when I finally scraped together enough to enroll in night classes at community college. It took me 4 years to get my associate's degree in accounting while working full-time. Victoria told everyone who'd listened that I was taking so long because I wasn't very bright. When I transferred to a state school for my bachelor's, she said it was a third-rate institution for people who couldn't get into real colleges. When I graduated summa cum laude, she didn't come to the ceremony. Said she had a hair appointment. Jason was there, though. He needed to borrow $5,000 for a business opportunity and figured I'd be in a good mood. I gave it to him. Of course I did. My first real accounting job paid $42,000 a year. I thought I was rich. I got an apartment, nothing fancy, a studio in a questionable neighbourhood, but it was mine. I was finally out of that basement. The peace lasted 3 months before Victoria called. They were having money troubles. Robert's business wasn't doing well. They needed help with the mortgage. Just temporary, just until they got back on their feet. The mortgage on their Westchester house was $6,000 a month. I was bringing home about $2,800 after taxes. The math didn't work, I told them that. "So you're going to let us lose our home?" Victoria asked. "After everything we did for you?" I moved back into the basement. I gave them $4,000 a month toward their mortgage. I lived on ramen and pasta and whatever I could shoplift from the grocery store because I literally couldn't afford food. I started getting good at my job. Really good. Numbers made sense in a way people never had. I could see patterns, predict outcomes, solve problems. Within 2 years, I'd moved to a bigger firm. My salary jumped to $65,000, then $80,000, then $100,000. Every raise meant Victoria's requests got bigger. Jason's gambling debts grew. Robert's business investments needed more capital. I was making 6 figures and living like I made minimum wage because every penny was flowing back to them. When I was 28, I met Michael at a financial conference. He was presenting on risk assessment strategies, and I was in the audience scribbling notes. Afterward, we got coffee, then dinner, then we started dating. I didn't tell him about my family for months. How do you explain that you're 30 years old and still paying your adoptive parents for the privilege of existing? How do you admit that you're so desperate for their approval that you've given them hundreds of thousands of dollars and gotten nothing but contempt in return? Michael was everything they weren't. He'd built his own company from nothing. He believed in me, saw my potential, didn't need anything from me except my company. When he told me he loved me 6 months in, I cried because I realised I'd never heard those words without conditions attached. We got married at the courthouse on a Tuesday afternoon. Just us and 2 witnesses. We pulled off the street. I wore a dress I bought on sale. Michael wore the suit he'd worn to work that morning. It was perfect. I didn't tell the Thorntons for a month. When I finally did, Victoria's response was immediate. "You need to have him invest in Robert's new venture. It's a sure thing. We'll cut you in for 10%. "No," I said. It was the first time I'd ever said that word to her. "Excuse me." "No, Michael's business is separate. I'm not asking him to invest in anything." Victoria's voice went cold. "I see. You find one successful man and suddenly you're too good for your family. Don't forget who raised you, Sarah." I wanted to scream that raising me would have involved love support encouragement. That what she'd done was exploit a vulnerable child for free labour and future income. But I didn't. I just said I had to go and hung up. A year later, the twins came. Leo arrived first, screaming and red-faced and perfect. Mia came 3 minutes later, quieter, watching the world with serious eyes. I held them both and made a promise I intended to keep. They would never feel unwanted. They would never doubt their worth. They would never know what it was like to beg for love from people who should have given it freely. I kept Michael and the babies secret from the Thorntons. I told them my marriage hadn't worked out. Let them think I was alone, struggling still the pathetic charity case they could bleed dry. I moved into Michael's penthouse but kept the studio apartment as an address for their mail. When they called asking for money, I gave it. When Jason needed bail money after a drunk driving incident, I paid it. When they wanted to upgrade to a beach house in the Hamptons because the Westchester house wasn't impressive enough, I co-signed the mortgage because they couldn't qualify on their own. $45,000 a month for a house I'd never been allowed to enter through the front door. By the time I was 34, I'd made chief financial officer at my firm. My salary was $1.2 million a year, not counting bonuses. I managed portfolios worth hundreds of millions. I gave presentations to boards of directors. I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal. At work, I was respected, powerful, someone who commanded attention when she walked into a room. At the Thorntons' house, I was still the orphan who should be grateful for scraps. The cognitive dissonance was destroying me. Michael knew. He saw me on the phone with Victoria, saw how small I made myself, how I reverted to that scared 8-year-old. He begged me to cut them off. "They're parasites," he said. "They've taken millions from you. Literal millions, Sarah. When is it enough?" I didn't know how to explain it to him. The hope that maybe this time would be different. The fear that if I stopped giving, I'd be confirming what I'd always suspected, that I was only worth what I could provide. The desperate, pathetic need to hear just once that I was enough. 3 months before the Thanksgiving dinner, Jason called. He needed money again. $50,000 this time. Some investment that went bad. If he didn't pay it back, there would be consequences. "I'm tapped out." I lied, I wasn't, but I was tired, so tired. "Then borrow it," he said. "You're a CFO, you have resources, don't be selfish." "I've given you hundreds of thousands," I said. "How is that selfish?" "We gave you a life," he shot back. "A name, a family. You'd be nothing without us. Probably dead in some gutter. This is the least you can do." I hung up on him. First time I'd ever done that. 2 hours later, Victoria called. "I heard you refused to help Jason. I'm disappointed in you." "I've helped him dozens of times. He never pays it back." "Because he's family. Family doesn't keep score." She paused. "Unless you don't think of us as family anymore." The guilt trip, the manipulation, the same patterns we'd danced for 26 years. "I think," I said slowly, "that I need some space to think about what family means." "Space." Her voice could have cut glass. "After everything we've done for you, you ungrateful little bitch." She'd called me worse over the years. But something about hearing it then, in that moment, flipped a switch in my brain. I didn't yell back, didn't cry, didn't apologise like I usually did. I just said, "I have to go," and hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Michael, listening to him breathe, and I did something I'd never done before. I added it up, all of it. Every payment, every loan, every co-signed debt, every time I'd paid Jason's way out of trouble, every mortgage payment, every credit card bill. The number made me physically sick. $4.7 million over 16 years. $4.7 million to people who'd told me I was worthless, who'd made me sleep in a basement, who'd charged me for the privilege of being neglected. I could have bought a house, could have retired, could have set up college funds for my kids and never worried about money again. Instead, I'd poured it all into a black hole that never filled because it was never about the money. It was about keeping me trapped in the role they'd assigned me. The eternal debtor, the grateful orphan, the lesser child. I started making calls the next morning, first to my lawyer, then to my accountant, then to private investigators. "I need documentation," I told them. "Everything, every payment I've made, every loan, every instance where they've used my name for credit. And I need to know where the money went, all of it." It took 6 weeks. What they found was worse than I'd imagined. Robert's businesses were shells for tax fraud. He'd been using my name and social security number to set up fake companies claiming expenses that didn't exist, hiding income. I'd unknowingly been complicit in federal crimes because I'd signed papers he'd told me were related to my debt repayment. Jason hadn't been gambling. Well, he had, but most of the money I'd given him had gone to maintaining his lifestyle. The Porsche he drove bought with my money. The country club membership, my money. His daughter's private school that cost $60,000 a year, my money. He'd been living like a millionaire on my dime while telling me he was desperate. Victoria's spending was its own category of insane. $300,000 in the past 2 years alone on clothes, jewellery, spa treatments and vacations, all on credit cards in my name that I'd given her for emergencies. The beach house in the Hamptons that I was paying $45,000 a month for, they'd been renting it out on Airbnb for weekends. They weren't using it, pocketing $15,000 a month in rental income. Income they'd never mentioned. Income they'd never used to help pay the mortgage I was drowning under. I sat in my lawyer's office looking at the evidence spread across his desk and felt something crystallise inside me. Not rage exactly. Rage was hot, messy, out of control. This was cold, calculated, final. "Can I use this?" I asked. My lawyer, a man named David, who'd been handling my estate planning, looked at me carefully. "In what capacity?" "To protect myself, and to make sure they never do this to anyone else." He leaned back in his chair. "Sarah, I've known you for 3 years. You're one of the kindest people I've ever met. You're also one of the smartest. So I'm going to ask you this once. Are you sure?" I thought about 8-year-old me sleeping on a cot in a basement, believing I deserved it. I thought about 18-year-old me giving up college to pay a debt that should never have existed. I thought about all the versions of myself at 20, 25, 30, bleeding money and hope and self-worth into people who saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit. I thought about Leo and Mia, my perfect children who would never know what it felt like to be conditional. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. David smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who'd just been given permission to destroy someone legally. "Then let's get to work." We spent the next 2 months building an airtight case. Every transaction documented, every email saved, every text message backed up. Every instance of fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and financial abuse catalogued and cross-referenced. I hired a security team, I opened new bank accounts they didn't know about, I transferred assets into trusts they couldn't touch. I built a fortress around my real life while maintaining the facade that nothing had changed. The Thanksgiving invitation came in October. Victoria's assistant sent a group text. Robert's 70th birthday. Big celebration at the beach house. I was expected to attend and contribute $5,000 toward the party costs. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I replied, "I'll be there, and I'm bringing my children." Victoria's response was immediate. "You have children since when?" "They're 7. You've never met them. I thought it was time." There was a long pause. Then fine. But they need to understand proper behaviour around important guests. This isn't a children's party. I didn't respond. I was too busy planning. The day of the party, I dressed the twins in their best clothes. Mia in a blue dress she'd picked out herself. Leo in a little suit that made him look heartbreakingly grown up. I explained to them that we were visiting Mommy's family and that these people might not be very nice, but I needed them to be brave. "Why are they mean?" Mia asked. "How do you explain toxicity to a 7-year-old? How do you tell them that some people are broken in ways that make them want to break others?" "Because they forgot how to be kind," I said. "But you don't have to worry. Mommy's going to handle it." We arrived at 4 in the afternoon. The party was already in full swing. Valets were parking cars. A string quartet was playing on the terrace. Women in designer gowns and men in expensive suits milled around with champagne glasses, the kind of people who judged you by your net worth and dismissed you if you didn't measure up. I'd dressed deliberately, not in a designer gown like the other women. In a simple black suit, professional but understated, hair pulled back, minimal jewellery. I wanted to look like what I was, an employee, a servant, someone beneath notice. Victoria met me at the front door. She looked me up and down and her lip curled. "You couldn't dress up. This is a formal event, Sarah." "I came straight from work," I said calmly. She glanced at the twins. "These are your children. Leo and Mia, your grandchildren." Victoria's smile was plastic. "How nice. Take them around to the kitchen entrance. I don't want guests questioning who they are." "They're your family," I said. "Robert and I will decide who is family," she replied. "Kitchen entrance, now." I could have argued, could have walked in the front door and forced the issue, but I needed her comfortable, confident, certain that I was still the same doormat I'd always been. So I walked my children around to the back of the house they'd paid for but would never own, through the kitchen entrance like help, past the caterers and the staff and the waiters who looked at us with pity. The kitchen was chaos. The smell of roasting turkey and honey, glazed ham and truffle mashed potatoes filled the air. A woman in a chef's jacket pointed us to a corner near the service entrance, where extra supplies were stacked. "You can wait there," she said, not unkindly. I sat the twins down on folding chairs next to boxes of extra napkins and cases of champagne. Through the doorway I could see the great room lit up like a cathedral. Crystal chandeliers dripping light, ice sculptures, flower arrangements that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The guests were New York society, old money and new money, and people who'd clawed their way up the ladder and now spent their time kicking people off the rungs below them. I recognised some of them. Catherine Westfield, CEO of a cosmetics company I'd analysed for a potential acquisition. James Chen, whose hedge fund I'd consulted for. Margaret Vanderberg, whose charitable foundation I'd evaluated for tax efficiency. People I'd sat across from in boardrooms, people who treated me as an equal in the office. Here, hiding in the kitchen, I was invisible. An hour passed. The twins were getting restless, hungry, confused. Leo kept asking when we were going to eat. Mia had been watching the platters of food go by with increasingly sad eyes. "Soon, baby," I kept saying. "Soon." I pulled out my phone, sent a text to David. "I'm here, standing by." His response was immediate. "All assets secured, documents ready, standing by outside." I sent another text to Michael. "If this goes bad, you know what to do." "It won't go bad," he replied. "You've got this. I love you." I looked at my children, at their sweet faces and their nice clothes and their complete innocence about what was about to happen. For a moment I almost backed out, almost decided that walking away quietly was enough. That I didn't need to do this publicly, didn't need to humiliate them the way they'd humiliated me. Then Mia looked up at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Mama, my stomach hurts, I'm so hungry." And I remembered every dinner I'd eaten alone in this family's kitchen after serving them. Every time I'd been told I wasn't good enough to sit at their table. Every moment of degradation they'd served me along with my scraps. My children would never feel that, not for one more second. I stood up, took their hands and walked through the doorway into the great room. The music was between songs. The guests were mingling, laughing, drinks flowing. Robert was holding court by the fireplace, telling some story that had people chuckling politely. Victoria was with a group of women near the windows, her voice carrying across the room as she bragged about something. Jason was at the bar, drunk already, his wife Amanda beside him, looking bored. I walked up to one of the waiters circling with hors d'oeuvres. "Excuse me," I said politely. "Could you bring 2 plates for my children? They haven't eaten since lunch." The waiter looked uncertain. "I'll have to check with Mrs. Thornton." "Mrs. Thornton is my mother," I said clearly, loud enough that people nearby turned to look. "These are her grandchildren. I'm sure she won't mind." The room started to quiet. Conversations dropped off, people sensing drama the way sharks sense blood in water. Victoria's voice cut through the air like a whip. "What do you think you're doing?" I turned to face her. "Getting food for my children." She crossed the room in angry strides, guests parting for her. Her face was flushed, whether from champagne or rage, I couldn't tell. "I told you to stay in the kitchen." "My children are hungry," I said calmly. "I'd like 2 plates, please." "These are your children?" one of the women asked. Martha something. Old money. The kind who thought having money made her better than people who earned it. "Yes," I said. "This is Leo and Mia. They're 7. "How charming," Martha said in a tone that meant the opposite. Victoria's smile was vicious. "Everyone, let me introduce Sarah. Some of you may not know, but she's not actually my daughter. We took her in from foster care years ago. A charity case. We gave her every opportunity, and this is how she repays us. Showing up to a formal event dressed like a secretary and bringing her illegitimate children to impose on our hospitality." The crowd murmured. I saw people pulling out their phones, sensing this was going to be Instagram-worthy. "My children aren't illegitimate," I said quietly. "I'm married." "To whom?" Victoria demanded. "Some loser as pathetic as you." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. This wasn't about Michael. This was about them finally revealing what they really thought of me in front of everyone. Jason pushed through the crowd carrying a plate piled high with food. Wagyu beef, roasted vegetables, truffle potatoes. He was smirking that same cruel smirk I'd seen since I was 8 years old. "You want food for your kids," he said loudly. "Here you go." He walked right up to where Leo and Mia stood frozen with fear and confusion. And then he opened his hands. The plate hit the marble floor with a crash that echoed through the silent room. Food splattered everywhere. Across the floor, across my daughter's pretty blue dress, across my son's first suit. Mia started crying. Leo tried to be brave, but I saw his chin trembling. "Want to eat," Jason said. "Get on your knees like the dogs you are. That's your place, that's always been your place. You're nothing, your mother's nothing. Don't contaminate our bloodline by thinking you belong at this table." The guests were filming. Every phone was up. I saw people texting, posting to social media in real time. This would be on gossip sites within an hour. The Thornton family publicly destroying the adopted daughter and her children. Entertainment for the elite. Victoria stepped forward, her voice ringing through the room. "Let me make something perfectly clear to everyone here. This is Sarah. For 26 years we fed her, clothed her, educated her, gave her opportunities she never would have had in foster care. We asked for nothing in return except gratitude and maybe a little help when we needed it. And what does she do? Shows up here with her bastard children, demands to be treated like real family acts, like she's entitled to the same respect as our legitimate son." She turned to me, her eyes cold and satisfied. "You're here to serve us, Sarah. That's all you've ever been good for. A workhorse to pay our bills when we needed help. Don't you dare forget your place. You're the help. You're the charity case. You're the forever debt we took on out of the goodness of our hearts. You owe us everything, and these," she gestured at my sobbing children, "these mistakes of yours don't belong here." The room was silent except for my daughter's crying. I bent down, wiped the tears from Mia's face with gentle hands, picked up Leo and held him close, feeling his heart racing against mine. I looked at both of them, these perfect children who deserved so much better than this moment. And then I stood up straight and looked at Victoria with clear, cold eyes. "You're absolutely right," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "This has always been a transactional relationship, debtor and creditor, employee and employer, user and used, and today that transaction ends." I set Leo down gently and pulled my iPad from my bag. Not to leave, not to call someone, but to connect to the AV system that controlled the massive LED screen mounted above the fireplace. Victoria's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Settling accounts," I said. The screen flickered. The family photos disappeared. In their place, a spreadsheet appeared. Clean lines, clear numbers, every transaction documented. I picked up the microphone the band had been using. "Good evening, everyone," I said. My voice was steady, professional, the same voice I used when presenting quarterly reports to the board. I apologise for interrupting Robert's birthday celebration, but since we're all here, I thought it would be a good time to clarify some misconceptions about my relationship with the Thornton family. "Stop this immediately," Robert said, standing up, but his voice shook. "This beach house you're all standing in," I gestured around the room, "the one worth $12 million. I'm the name on the mortgage. I pay $45,000 every month. Have been for the past 8 years. That's $4.3 million. I clicked to the next slide. Bank statements appeared. The Porsche Cayenne in the driveway with the vanity plates registered in my name. I make the payments. The 40-foot yacht at the marina, also mine. The country club membership that gets you into this social circle, I pay the dues." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Catherine Westfield's eyes widen in recognition, saw James Chen start to smile. The platinum credit card Jason used to buy his wife, that Cartier bracelet she's wearing, my card. The Hermes bag Victoria's carrying, bought with my Amex. The Rolex on Robert's wrist, I paid for it last Christmas. "What's your point?" Jason demanded, but he looked pale. "My point," I said calmly, clicking to the next slide, "is that this family has extracted $4.7 million from me over the past 16 years, and I have documentation of every cent." The screen filled with more spreadsheets, more receipts, more proof. "This is what family does," Victoria said desperately. "We help each other." "Help implies reciprocity," I said. "What you did was exploitation. You charged an 8-year-old child rent. You forced an 18-year-old to pay you back for the privilege of being neglected. You used my name to commit tax fraud. You used my credit to maintain a lifestyle you couldn't afford. You bled me dry while telling me I was worthless." I pulled up my banking app. Right there in front of everyone, I started typing. "What are you doing?" Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. "I'm cancelling every credit card in my name," I said, "starting now." I hit send. Immediately, phones around the room started buzzing. Not mine, theirs. Text messages from banks, email notifications from credit card companies. "Your black Amex," I said conversationally, "declined. Your Visa declined. The backup card you keep in your safe for emergencies also declined." Jason lunged at me. My security guard, the one I'd hired 2 months ago, stepped smoothly out of the crowd and caught him by the collar. One smooth motion and Jason was on the floor gasping. "Don't touch her," the guard said quietly. I kept working on my iPad. "This next email is to the bank. I'm initiating foreclosure proceedings on this beach house. You see, when I co-signed the mortgage, I made sure my name was first on the title. Which means I can call the loan at any time, which I'm doing now." "You can't," Robert said, but he looked like he might pass out. "I can and I am. You have 30 days to vacate. After that, the bank will seize the property and everything in it." The lights went out. All of them. The music stopped. The heating system shut off. The only light came from the fireplace and people's phones. I held up my phone, letting the screen illuminate my face. "I control every system in this house, because it's my house. And I just locked you out of everything." Outside, I heard sirens, right on time. "Those are the asset recovery specialists I hired. They have court orders to seize the vehicles, place liens on your remaining assets, and inventory everything in this house for the foreclosure proceedings." The front doors opened. Men in official jackets with clipboards started flowing in. The guests panicked, pushing toward the exits, not wanting to be associated with the scandal unfolding. "Wait," Victoria said, and her voice cracked. "Sarah, please. Think about what you're doing. This will ruin us." "You've been ruined for years," I said. "You just hid it behind my money." "We're family," she said desperately. "No," I said clearly. "We're not. We never were. I was an investment you made, a very bad investment, and today I'm liquidating my assets." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean those things. You know I have a temper. I love you. You're my daughter. Don't do this. The press, the gossip, everyone will know." "Everyone should know," I said, pulling away from her. "Everyone should know what you really are." I turned to David, who'd been standing in the doorway watching. He stepped forward with a briefcase full of documents. "David is my attorney," I told the room. "He has lawsuits prepared for fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse of your mother-in-law, whose trust fund you've been draining, Robert, tax evasion, identity theft. We're filing all of them tomorrow morning. The IRS already has copies of everything. I imagine they'll be in touch very soon." Robert made a sound like a wounded animal. Victoria was still on her knees, tears streaming down her face, mascara running. Jason tried to get up. My security guard pressed a hand on his shoulder, keeping him down. "Oh, Jason," I said, almost as an afterthought. "There's one more thing. Your daughter Emily. The trust fund her maternal grandparents set up before they died, the one you're supposed to be the custodian of until she's 18, I have documentation that you've stolen almost $200,000 from it to pay gambling debts." His face went white. "I'm filing a lawsuit on Emily's behalf tomorrow. Child Custody Services will probably be interested too. I imagine you're looking at criminal charges 5 to 10 years, David says." "You bitch," he breathed. "No," I said. "I'm someone who's done being your ATM." I walked through the darkness to my children, picked up Mia and took Leo's hand. They were quiet now, pressed against me, not understanding everything, but knowing Mommy had made the bad people stop being mean. At the door, I turned back one last time. The repo men were tagging furniture. The guests had fled. Victoria was still on the floor sobbing. Robert looked like he'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Jason was handcuffed, my guard having called the police for assault. The dynasty they'd built on lies and borrowed money, and my exploitation was crumbling in real time. "Happy birthday, Robert," I said. "I hope this party was everything you deserved." We walked out into the cold November air. My limousine was waiting, engine running, warm light spilling from its windows. Michael was inside. I could see him through the tinted windows. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. The beach house was dark, except for flashlights. Police cars were pulling up. Tomorrow the gates would be locked. The furniture would be auctioned. The bank would seize everything. And I felt nothing but relief. 4 weeks later, I'm standing in our penthouse in Manhattan, looking out over Central Park. The twins are at the dining table doing homework. Michael is cooking dinner, something simple but made with love. Real love, not the transaction I confused for family for so many years. The TV is on in the background. The news is covering the Thornton scandal. Robert is awaiting trial for tax fraud and embezzlement. Victoria's been shunned by every social circle she tried to break into. The beach house sold at auction, and I made sure to bid on it through a shell company. I won. I'm turning it into a foster care retreat centre. Jason's in jail awaiting his own trial for the trust fund theft. His wife divorced him 2 weeks ago. Mia comes over and tugs on my sleeve. "Mummy, can we share our dinner with anyone?" I kneel down and look at her beautiful, kind face. The face that deserved so much better than what she saw that night. "No, baby," I tell her, pulling her into a hug. "This dinner is for us. Your brother, your dad, me and you. No one gets to take from us anymore. No one gets to make us feel small. Do you understand?" She nods, and I see that she does. She's learning what I had to learn the hard way. That you can't pour from an empty cup. That there's a difference between kindness and being a doormat. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. I spent 34 years trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it. I martyred myself on the altar of their approval, convincing myself that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, bled enough, they'd finally see my worth. But worth doesn't come from other people, it comes from within. And the moment I stopped seeking their validation was the moment I became free. They called me ungrateful, cruel, a monster. The society pages painted me as the villain in their victim story. And you know what? I don't care. Because my real family, the one I chose and who chose me, knows the truth. Because my children will grow up knowing they're valued not for what they can provide, but for who they are. Because I finally learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. So here's my question for you. How long are you going to let toxic people drain your light? How many more times are you going to accept crumbs and call it love? What's it going to take for you to realise you deserve a seat at the table, not a spot on the floor? The hardest prison to escape is the one you don't realise you're in. But once you see the bars, once you feel that snap of clarity, you have a choice. Stay and slowly disappear, or walk away and finally start living. I chose freedom. What will you choose? If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been made to feel less, then if you're ready to stop being someone's emotional punching bag or financial resource, smash that like button. Subscribe, because I'll be sharing more stories about taking back your power. And comment below. Tell me about your moment of clarity. When did you realise enough was enough? What was your last straw? Remember, you're not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And anyone who demands that price isn't family, they're just users wearing a mask. Until next time, protect your peace, guard your boundaries, and never forget that you are worth more than what you can give away.